How to find dispersed camping on the fly. And if you don't know what dispersed camping is also known as boondocking. Where I'm from back in Alaska, it's just called camping. It means you're camping out in no man's land, out in the wilderness. No pavement, no fire pits, no picnic tables, no restrooms, just camping out in nature. In addition to just looking for unmarked dirt roads that lead out into the desert or into the forest or whatever environment you happen to be in, you can also look for signs like these. Signs like these will also very commonly, very typically lead you out into the backcountry where you can find some really, really great dispersed camping. But again, be careful. Make sure you're not in a state park or a national park or an indigenous people's reservation. Make sure the land isn't private. The bottom line is these brown signs very commonly, very regularly take you out into the backcountry where there's going to be little splinter roads where you can find some amazing dispersed camping. When you're driving through an area, whether it's on a scenic byway or a back road or anything, and you encounter this sign, this is an indication that you have some amazing dispersed camping out here in this area that is legal and it's free. Now obviously you have to be mindful of private property, so if you see a big fence with a gate and a lock on it or anything that says private property, it kind of goes without saying that you can't drive into there and just go camping. Now it also needs to be pointed out that just because you see a gate on a dirt road doesn't necessarily mean it's private property. That can be a cattle gate or a wildlife gate that the Bureau of Land Management has put up just to keep animals off the highway. If there's no sign and no lock, the odds are that gate is okay to open and drive through. You just have to be really mindful of closing the gate behind you. And this is a great example of a gate or a fence that you might encounter, but it has no lock or no sign. That means this road is legal to drive down and open to the public, where you will probably find some amazing dispersed camping. And these gates are typically just fastened, just held together by tie wire. Just be sure that when you go through, you close it up again. Obviously, no matter where you are in this world, leave the place the same way you found it, unless you're gonna leave it better. Because I always pick up other people's garbage, no matter where I go. You might just see a dirt road peeling off the main road. And commonly these roads don't have names, but sometimes they have very, very intriguing sounding names, like this one. And when you turn down a road like this, whether it has a name or a number or just no name, just a road, you will observe that this road just points itself all the way into the mountains or the backcountry, whatever kind of no man's land you happen to be in at the time. And it is these roads that I have found lead to the most amazing campsites, at the very least, the most private. Here we have again another example of an offshoot road. And this trail, I don't want to call it a road because it looks more like a trail, leads out into the hills, the mountains, the desert, the backcountry. Because some of these trails are made by OHV vehicles and four-wheelers and motorcycles and other really off-road vehicles. Some of the routes can be very sketchy, while some of the other routes can be very easily passable for nearly any vehicle. Of course, that's always weather permitting. And so when I'm looking for a good dispersed camping spot, I'll take one of these roads and I'll follow it for a couple of miles, maybe even 10 or 20, depending on a lot of different variables. And if the road appears to be getting sketchy or too weird, I'll just turn around and head back out to find a new one, because there are tons, I mean thousands, probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of roads and trails and paths just like this in the public lands area and basically all over the West. And as you travel down these roads, what you're going to look for is a good turnout. And what you're hoping to find, and will commonly find on these little turnouts, is a fire ring, a ring of rocks where they've had campfires. Because customarily, I'm going to say unofficially, but in my opinion, officially, once you find a fire ring, you found a campsite. Now, commonly with these fire rings in remote dispersed campsite areas, they're gonna fall apart over time. They might not have been used in years, so you're probably gonna have to reassemble it. Which is simple enough. You just restack the rocks in a nice ring. I always keep a shovel in my truck so I can dig it down deeper as well. Now, this spot we just came across for demonstration purposes is not far off of the main road, which means there's gonna be traffic here. But if you're pulling a trailer or you just don't wanna get too crazy or rowdy, this is a great and safer campsite simply because it is closer to people. But the road that we were coming down when we found this campsite still goes miles and miles and miles back into the backcountry where you won't be able to hear the road, but you won't know how good the road is until you start going down it. So always be safe, always be mindful of the weather. This specific place is rural, but perhaps you have a little more time on your hands and you're deliberately coming out just to camp versus trying to find a spot while you're on a road trip or just driving through. Maybe you want something a little more remote rather than rural. Now, as you can see, a lot of these side roads are absolutely passable by nearly any vehicle. Heck, we're following a Tesla right now. And if you're just new getting into this kind of stuff, you're gonna find roads like this that have signs like this. Typically that means this has very commonly used hiking trails in the area, which means you're gonna encounter a lot more people. So if you're nervous about being all alone in the backcountry, a road like this might be more suitable for you. But me personally, I don't like being around people when I camp. So we're gonna follow this nice dirt road for a couple of miles and then try to find a splinter road off of this main road to find a more secluded, more remote camping site. Now, whether you're on the main highway, a scenic byway, or a dirt back road like I am now, you might encounter a sign like this. Now, wherever you encounter a sign like this, it could be right alongside the main highway, or it could be off of a dirt road, back road like we are right now. These signs are very strong indicators that there's some great dispersed camping nearby. Be careful about your directions if you're not using a GPS or anything like that. I'm not gonna take that many turns so that it's very easy for me to get back on the main road and drive back out to safety. Or, worst case scenario, have to walk back out to safety. So we are not going to take any of these turns. We are gonna stay on the main road, keep going straight with the sun over my left shoulder. That means, for the most part, I'm heading north. I'm only a couple of miles off of the main highway, so I want to get much farther back, probably closer to 10 miles down this really nice dirt road. And that's when I'll begin really scouting for a good place to make camp for the night. So I found a nice little spur road, a nice little splinter trail off of the main road. Now this is where it gets weird. These little side trails can be very rough. They're commonly getting washed out. You have to be very careful driving down these, even if you have a high clearance, good four-wheel drive vehicle. For example, this little ditch right here, this is a drainage, so that when it storms, this is a little raging river, a miniature raging river, but it can make very steep drop-offs. And if you're out here anywhere near inclement weather, this could get you flooded in. Now, as we see, as I'm walking up the trail ahead before I just go charging down into my truck, the trail becomes impassable. But there's another offshoot splinter trail right up here. So I basically turned too soon. So the little area that looked like I had a great campsite had multiple access points, which is super common out here. And depending on what you're looking for a campsite, it's gonna depend on where you go. If you wanna be in a protected little hollow in the rocks, or if you wanna be higher up with a much better view. So this is a great little dispersed camping spot. The only problem is this particular campsite is only about 50 or maybe 100 feet off of the dirt road. So people driving down, which isn't gonna be very many, but if they do, you're gonna hear them. So an important skill you're gonna need when you're exploring these back roads looking for dispersed camping is you're gonna need to know how to reverse. Because commonly when you go down little spur roads, you won't be able to turn around. That means the only thing you can do is reverse back to a place that you can turn around, or in some cases, reverse all the way out back to the road. Now here's another great little spur road, offshoot trail from the main road that potentially is gonna lead you to an amazing campsite. But again, those little spur roads, be very careful. And if it's starting to look dicey, get out of your vehicle and walk ahead, scout it out to see what it's gonna look like, if it's safe to drive down. When I'm looking for camping, it's not very common for me to see these, but here's one right here, so let me show you. That's the little trail that will lead you to that campsite with the steel fire ring. So if you see a little sign with a tent and an arrow and you're looking for a campsite, that's probably a good indication there's not just a good campsite, but an actually sanctioned one. So we are officially about 4 or 5 miles down this dirt road off of the main highway. And we have officially entered an area that I would call remote. There is no structures, no buildings, not even power lines in the distance. This, in my opinion, is where the very, very best dispersed camping is gonna be. Once you get to a location like this, where you can't see any indication of human civilization, you are in a remote no man's land, the best dispersed camping. And why do I say it's the best? It's because out here, this is where you're gonna see the wildlife. This is where the raw, wild, unspoiled landscape can be found. And it can be accessible in a wide variety of different vehicles. If you're on a good dirt road like this, a Tesla could do it. If you're trying to take the spur roads, maybe you want to camp up in there in the mountain, well, that I wouldn't do without a 4-wheel drive or high clearance vehicle, because the odds are those spur road trails are gonna get pretty dicey. Whereas these ones here, they're gonna have campsites available to you pretty much right off the road that dang near any vehicle could handle. But this is where the dispersed camping is, and this is how you find it. And this is also why I stress how important it is to be careful about where you're going and how far back. These roads can go hundreds of miles and you can be in the middle of nowhere. And if you run into trouble out there, you're gonna be in some serious trouble. You don't wanna have to walk out 100 miles. So when in doubt, don't go out. Always be safe, don't take unnecessary risks. Okay, so we're about 5 miles down this pretty well-maintained dirt road. Then we got to a no trespassing sign because there's a game ranch out here. But there's a spur road that takes off to the right at the sign that says no trespassing. And this spur road is where I would set camp. Let's see what we can find. And disclaimer and warning, with these smaller side roads off the dirt roads, you're gonna have commonly branches hanging out into the road. So you might get some Colorado pinstripes on your rig, and sometimes these roads can be sandy or washed out. There's a variety of different hazards and challenges that you can encounter, so just know that coming in and always be prepared. There's a huge flock of quail in here. There's probably 30 or 40 of them, both sides of the wash. And this is one of the big reasons I come out here into the backcountry to go camping, because this is where you're gonna encounter the most wildlife. Out here is where you're gonna find the most peace quiet and solitude. And I've found places just like this in the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, pretty much anywhere and everywhere. You just have to look for it and be willing to explore. I've been following this road for a little farther than I thought I'd have to before I found a suitable camping site. So, I'm not lost, just have to turn around, follow this road, then take a left at the main road, and I can get back to the highway. But this is turning out to be more of an adventure than I thought, which is also a key thing to keep in mind. When you're doing stuff like this, it might not work out. You might not find what you're looking for. There's a whole bunch of different things that could happen that could make you just want to turn around and go back home. But that doesn't mean it's a failed adventure, because the adventure is in the journey, it's in the experience. Even if you have to turn around and go back home, you've still not only seen some amazing landscapes, some amazing scenery, but you've also gained some knowledge about where not to go. The farther we go down this road, the rougher and less used it gets. Now when you're out here exploring this backcountry, like right now, I'm 10 miles just out in the middle of nowhere, you might encounter something like this. Or a wide variety of other different cattle pen, corral style structures, because they are corrals. Out here in the West, free range cattle is a pretty big thing. So a lot of the ranchers are allowed to graze their cattle out here just on the Bureau of Land Management, no man's land area, and then periodically they round them up, and that's what they have the corrals for. Okay, we're about 15 miles off of the main road. I found a little spur road off of this spur road. Let's see where it goes. Basically just drives up a wash, which is a drainage, which is a dry creek bed or river bed. So you're not gonna wanna do this type of road if you're anywhere near bad weather. Because if it rains real heavy, all of a sudden this road is actually gonna be a river. Only temporarily, but know that coming in. So at this point, I'm not even necessarily looking for a camping spot, because I've already passed a handful of really good ones. Now I'm just pushing deeper and deeper and deeper into the backcountry to see where this road goes. And boy, I've pushed a lot farther back than I thought I would. We have reached the end of the road. And we're up in the mountains now. I was getting worried there for a second, or excited that this thing was gonna pop all the way over the mountains onto the back side, kind of closer to where I live. But this is it. This is the dead end. There's an old fire ring right here, as well as whatever this is. Also some tanks, presumably water tanks, maybe reservoirs. Either way, this is it. This is the end of the road. There's a campsite here, but unfortunately, I don't like all the man-made aspects that this road goes to. But I'm not mad about it, because that's the whole reason this road existed. But I am confident, absolutely confident, I could camp here tonight, not see, smell, or even hear another human being, all by myself out here in the mountain. And I only found this spot because I explored the road and I just kept going to see where it went. It's easy to find my way home because I really only made 2 turns. So getting back to the highway is technically only 2 turns. But in the worst case scenario, it's a 15-mile walk, which would not be very fun. Old fire ring remnants. There's 2 more over there. It's a big open spot. This is where the undisturbed wildlife is. And if you just hang out here and be quiet, you're not playing music all loud or talking loud like I'm talking right now, the wildlife will come back out. This would be a great place to stargaze at night and just see nature completely undisturbed, so long as you're able to blend into it. That's kind of important. This is how I find dispersed camping. Now that was a really fun experience. If you have an idea for an adventure that we should go on, please put it in the comment section. And if you're looking for some more adventure ideas, you can click one of these links and go to the page, because there's literally hundreds of other adventures going on there, and I hope to see you next time.